OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Good morning and welcome along. I'm Aisling O'Reilly, sitting in this morning for Adrian Barry and Owen Sheehan. They're off gallivanting, enjoying that extra long bank holiday weekend, and rightly so. Hope you all at home had a great St. Patrick's Day. It was great to see the scenes again around Dublin and around Ireland, just crowds out again. It was unbelievable to see. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now by Tommy Rooney. How's it going, Tommy?
Morning, Ash. You've got big boots to fill today.
Yeah, I do indeed. Thrown right in the deep end. How was your St. Patrick's Day?
It was good. It was quiet. Didn't get up to a huge pile. A couple of pints yesterday evening. Nothing too hectic. How did you get on?
Very good. Yeah, there was no pints for me now. Hopefully, maybe one or two today. I'm working for the weekend, so won't have too many. But
you've got one of the busiest sports weekends of the year ahead of you, don't you?
I do. I have the last Six Nations game. I can't believe we're at the last game. It's unbelievable how fast it has gone through. But it's been a great Six Nations, really enjoyable. And there's a lot on the line for the last game, which is the most exciting part and where we want to be.
What's been the highlight for you covering it? You've been all the games, have you?
I have, yeah. Sorry, I haven't been at the Italy game in the Aviva because I was actually at the Paddy O'Shea tournament down in Kerry, so I missed that one. But probably my highlight would have been, I would say, Stade de France, the France game in Paris. Just the stadium, the build-up, the noise in the stadium, Tommy, was just incredible. Like something
really?
I've never experienced before. They could barely hear me back on air, and obviously that's why I'm there. So I was trying to hide nearly under the desk at times, making sure that they could hear me over the Skype. But no, it was just incredible. And now obviously last weekend as well in Twickenham was just as good. But I think just the noise and atmosphere and the way the French do it. They had MCs, they had DJs playing, hyping the crowd. Yeah, it was just something else. What about you? What are you at for the weekend?
Class. I'm thinking of going to Clare and Meath. Very, very important game in Ennis here on Sunday. Both teams on 4 points. I know we're not going to get stuck talking Meath all morning this morning, but we might do a few minutes on it at 8:30 when we're talking about the GAA. But I think I'm going to get to that. I'm going to wear my half and half jersey. I'm only joking, I'm not. But
you can't do that, Tommy. That is a step too far.
No, I can't do that. That's going to be an interesting game. I think Meath have had a decent record over Clare over the last little while. And both teams need a result this weekend. The bottom of that table is very dodgy at the minute. Cork down Offaly are all kind of in together. Cork are playing both down on Offaly, so it's going to be a very, very interesting weekend. The GAA, you're heading to the athletic grounds then from the Aviva on Saturday up to Armagh and Kerry. That's going to be a bit of fun on Sunday. Yeah,
that should be a great game. I love watching Armagh football, and I think this year in particular they've really started to click. I know it's early days, but it definitely seems like things are starting to click for them. So I'm excited to see how they go against Kerry. Look, Kerry now are an unbelievable side. I think they might have too much for them, but just the game itself and in the athletic grounds, a great pitch, a great venue to go to. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. So yeah, very busy weekend of sport ahead.
I was down in Tralee last weekend watching Kerry, and I was so impressed by some of their half forwards. Darren Moynihan in particular. Like the physicality of some of these players is unbelievable. It's off the charts. Like Clifford, like the Oisin Mullen matchup on Clifford, I don't think it worked, but God, it was fascinating to watch. You know, David Clifford, like he was relatively quiet, and yet he still turned up with 5 or 6 points. You just knew when he got the ball in his hands, he was going to do something with it every single time. So that was really interesting to watch it from that perspective, that close to the touchline. And so it's a shootout really between Mayo, Kerry and Armagh for that league final as well. So I think you're going to have Armagh really going for Kerry this weekend.
I think so. Like obviously a league final for them is absolutely massive. You know, it would be incredible for their development. So I think they will be going hell for leather to try get over the line. Of course they will. I think even Kieran Donaghy in there, you can really see the work he's done. I know we're chatting about it a little bit more, but I've talked to a few of them, and they've given me a few insights into Kieran and what he's brought to Armagh football, and I think you can see that coming through now. So yeah, it's really exciting. And as you said about Kerry, David Clifford, that's a sign of a good player, isn't it? When he doesn't do much, but then he just pops up and he gets a score when you at least expect it.
It's a funny one. It's tough on defenders as well, because like Ronan McNamee, by all accounts, had a great game on him in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. Clifford still scores 8 points that day. Yeah. So it's like it's damage limitation all the time. And like what I was impressed with the last week was the movement of Tony Brosnan, some of his passing. Like Kerry the last day against Mayo were missing Sean O'Shea, Paul Ganey, David Moran, Paul Murphy, Gavin White, and they were still, in quite a good place. So James O'Donoghue was interesting. I thought we had James O'Donoghue talking them up on the football pod earlier in the week. He was saying, well, Mayo were getting a good bit of credit even though they lost. Kerry still have a lot to come back. And then we had Tommy Welch on AM on Wednesday, really excited about Kilkenny and talking them up. So it seems like a new era of GA punditry where pundits aren't afraid to talk up their own teams. For a long time, we would have been used to Owen Sheehan on the show, talking up the opposition, bit of Yera here and there. I don't think myself or yourself have ever been afraid to back Meath. Like, you've definitely done that. You set the standard last year, backing Meath and calling them for the All-Ireland.
Do you know what? Early. That was a funny one because obviously I was only starting out in this game, really, and even like family, friends, like my mom in particular, she'll hate this now that I said it, but she was like, Aisling, like, you need to be like serious now. You can't be calling me to win every game. Like, they're not going to take you seriously in there. And I was like, I am serious. Mom, they are going to go the whole way this year. And I would I know I said it early on, and obviously once they got over the Cork game, that was the big one. If they could do that, I knew they could go the whole way. But yeah, I know we haven't did it so much, I don't think, with the men's as much, but I was just so sure of the women's team. That's why I did that. But we finally done it, Tommy. Look at this Meath takeover. We said it for so long. It's happened.
I know. It's been more than deserved as well. So if they get a win at the weekend and they stay up in Division 2, we might go again for it on next Monday or Tuesday. What was I going to say? Did you see Flooring Porter yesterday?
Oh my God, I had him backed. Yes.
Did you?
I
Wow,
did.
Fair play.
I know. Danny Mullins, he's just unbelievable. Over the last year or year and a half, he's really came into his own. So delighted for him. Serious hard work goes in by Danny, and I was delighted for him. And the scenes in the parade ring after was just amazing to see. And when it's a syndicate of just a small group, like from Galway, it's not big investors or anything like that. A nice, niche, small group was just a brilliant scene to see. And you see them throwing Danny up on their shoulders when he was coming in. And it was a great ride by him as well. Like, he did it so well. He sort of took off in front and then he held him back just to, I suppose, have enough in the tank to be able to push on in that last straight. And it was brilliant to see. So Cheltenham, it's been good. Have you had any winners or any bets on yourself? Are you following John?
I was following a little bit of JD on the first day, a little bit of Tom, but I didn't do my own prep this year, and I just haven't been able to get into it. Other years, especially when you be in the office or you be chatting to the lads a lot, you might be prepping for 2 months, 3 months, and having half an eye on it. I just going in blind this year, just watching races for a bit of the fun. Like the scenes of James Scahill yesterday. We're going to play the video a little later before we get to John. James Scahill in the ring, his uncle involved in the syndicate. Like, that was class to see. They're the moments that you're waiting for with racing. It might be a good idea to start with Rod, see how he's getting on with Cheltenham once you get to Ronan and Quinny after this as well.
Oh, brilliant. So he likes a few bets then?
I think they follow the horses, the two lads. Yeah, I'd say they do.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, thanks a million, Tommy. You'll be back on throughout the show anyway. Yeah,
I'll chat to you at about 8:30, Ash.
Happy days. Thanks so much. Well, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. And coming up now in a few moments' time, we're going to be chatting to Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan. But first, here's Rory O'Connor.
I don't understand how the RFU can allow Eddie Jones to diminish this tournament, because it's the bread and butter. It's the income stream for the unions. This is where the money comes from. The prize money is pretty good. The gate receipts for Twickenham are very important, and for them to go out and lose to Ireland and at home, it should be unacceptable to them in a tournament that, while you are always looking towards 2023, it's always there, but that doesn't mean you don't focus on the here and now as well. It's possible to do both. And yes, I would be kind of worried about certain Irish players' age profile, that they're fine now, but will they be fine in 18 months? And I would like to see, Carberry's had 2 games in this tournament, so I'm less concerned about that now. There are things you want to be building towards. I completely understand why a coach would pick their best team in the here and now and would want to win, but they should always have the long term. I think Ireland have a reasonable balance on it. There's a couple of positions where I'm a bit concerned, but you're right. The tournament is in an interesting place because CVC have bought into it. The private money has now come into it. South Africa are hovering there. I think they will inevitably come in at some stage, because that's where there's a lot of money to be made from that. I think they won't do it at the expense of the Italians. I think it might be an expanded tournament. It's in an interesting place, but it remains a very important piece of rugby real estate. I don't think it will be diminished. Eddie Jones will be gone in 2 years, and another England coach will come in and will probably respect the tournament more. He built his first World Cup cycle on a Grand Slam and a tournament win, and he seemed to care an awful lot more about it then. I think this might bite him in the ass in the end. You know, it's a dangerous game to be playing, and he's undermining the confidence in his own team as well as he goes through these tournaments. Like he can say that this doesn't matter as much, but you know, if it is back-to-back fifth place finishes for the best resource team in the entire tournament, it's terrible.
Yeah, Rory O'Connor there with a lot of interesting insights into what's happening at the minute in the Six Nations. Delighted to say that I'm joined by Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan. Good morning, lads.
Hi, Aisling. How are you?
Good now.
Morning, Aisling.
How's it going? Have you been following Cheltenham at all?
Probably has, not me.
What about you, Ronan? Did you throw on any bets, or would you follow it when it's on?
I used, but it's hard over here now because I have the Irish TV channels, but the afternoons are quite busy. But when I go home, I enjoy watching the racing review, that's for sure. I was listening to your discussion with Tommy, and in fairness, you were making Gaelic football sound interesting as well as Cheltenham, because I watched a bit of Dublin Tyrone at the weekend, and that was a dog of a match, but interesting nonetheless. Cheltenham, yeah, there was. I agree with all of them. The Flooring Porter ride. Poor old Gallopin, the Champ, is it, that fell at the last when he was clear.
That's it.
Then 30 minutes later, he goes out, and Paul Townend, he goes out and wins. That's good composure from a top sportsman. Obviously, Rachel Blackmore's a massive fan of Jessica's in our house. My daughter is into horses, so I think that week or those 4 days, it holds a very special place in Irish people's hearts, and but in terms of backing them and stuff, no, I gave that up long ago, thankfully.
Yeah, save your money, you're better off. Absolutely. And as we move on to the Six Nations then, exciting weekend ahead. Just to talk about Twickenham last weekend as well. It was unbelievable scenes there. I was there. It was my first time in Twickenham, and just the noise was something else really to experience. For you, Ronan, when it was 4 or 15 all, were you nervous for Ireland at that point?
I was, actually, because kind of England had the energy at that stage, and it was a game that obviously with the disallowed Caelan Doris try, it could have been a very, very different game, I think, and Ireland could have gone on to win by maybe 30 or 40, but that's what people, I suppose, when they're in the heat of battle, they misunderstand the fact that when a team gets energy, it's hard to get it, and momentum, it's hard to get it back from it. But for Ireland to, I suppose, realise, okay, we're actually now in a dogfight, we need to probably change plan, and they only changed plan with probably 7 minutes to go to just be a little bit more direct, be a little bit more brutal in the carry. And they hurt England by doing that, and to score, I suppose, 2 unanswered late tries was put a different reflection on the scoreboard. But that's what happens at the top level. You're talking about tiny margins, even with red cards. So Ireland finished very strongly, which will give them a lot of confidence. But I think from reviewing the video, they'd have looked at maybe a lot of inaccuracies in their own game and forcing offloads, and probably being in a hurry to score, as opposed to maybe if they didn't knock on the ball 5 or 6 phases later, I think they would have got a lot more reward.
Yeah, I don't think by any means it was their best performance, but I think, Quinny, the way they showed that composure to really push on and get over the line, like we heard Johnny Sexton say after the game that, 2 years ago they mightn't have done that, they mightn't have been able to win that game.
Yeah, that was impressive. I think it certainly was nervy, Aisling, and the great thing from an Irish point of view is when they probably reviewed the match on Monday, there was a certain amount of mistakes and errors. I think 17 turnovers, too many in a game, and I think the way they were trying to play and the confidence they had in trying to offload the ball, keep the ball alive is it shows their mentality at the moment. But they didn't panic, and to get a record win and a bonus point win against England and Twickenham was absolutely fantastic. And I think it's a learning curve for this team going forward. Everybody automatically thought when Charlie Ewells was off that's it, Ireland is going to have it comfortable here. One thing they probably need to learn to do is when they have the man advantage is how do they optimise their performance and be really ruthless and probably hold on to the ball. The easiest thing, and Ronan will tell you this as a coach and as a player as well, if you're defending a team with extra numbers, and it's happened lots of us with sin bins in games, they're the type of games that you want the opposition to kind of the team with the numerical advantage to force things and hope that they turn the ball over after 2 or 3 phases. The hardest part for a rugby player defending is when you get into multi-phase, 10, 15, 20 phases even. So Ireland never really got to that big number. They always kind of turned it over or made a mistake. So credit to England. But I was kind of baffled that, and it just goes to show where England are at the moment, that they're kind of cheering a performance against Ireland, a bonus point loss against Ireland because of desire and passion and stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. But look, I suppose Eddie Jones is under a lot of pressure, and it's a complete contrast to where Andy Farrell was probably over a year ago. That turning point was last year against England in the Aviva, and Ireland are easy to watch now. They're playing confidently, and they are making some mistakes. They're certainly not the finished article, and they still have some issues, but I think they're in a decent place. But you move on to Scotland this weekend, and this is a real test of how good this team is now. Every week is a test, and just what they'll mentally be like, and what will they be able to find a route to streak this Saturday against Scotland.
Yeah, and it's about, I suppose, taking those learnings and putting them into action, and I suppose growing each game. And this, as I mentioned at the start there, Ronan, the crowd and the noise in Twickenham was something else, and it was the same in the Stade de France game, and I think it might have affected Ireland a little bit in that game. Maybe they lacked a little bit of leadership as well with Johnny not in there, but I think in Twickenham they overcame that, and that was unbelievable. Is that a factor, say, for you when you're out playing? Like, was that a factor, the noise, the crowd? Is it something that you have to sort of block out?
That's something you love to as well, I think. The more you probably seasoned professional you become, you kind of, I think, you realise in your head that, performing at Lansdowne Road or the Aviva is very good, but I think the true test of character is when you go away from home, when you go to the Millennium Stadium, you go to Stade de France, you go to Twickenham, you go to Eden Park. These are places that you want to be tested physically and mentally. So I think what you say is that's what experience is, because for you, I'd say you were blown away by Twickenham because it's a real impressive stadium where, unfortunately in the Aviva, you have 3/4 of a stadium. You don't have the back end where it isn't complete. You go to Twickenham and you're kind of engulfed by and taken over by this great kind of emporium of just a huge great stand in front of you. And I think there was obviously a good Irish support there, but the majority of the people there were English, and everyone was probably, from an English point of view, rattled with the early sending off. But I think to reply to your question, Ireland will be looking to improve against Scotland and to put together probably an 80-minute performance with the asterisk that they got a bonus point victory in Twickenham, which is probably a contradiction in certain terms. But the way I suppose the team have been going under fire between mixing the kind of a ruck game and an offload game to they'll be looking to put all that together, because I think they have some very good forwards playing on top of their game. You look at, Robbie Henshaw can't force his way into the team, so that's a reflection of where the strength and depth in Irish rugby is at the minute.
Yeah, big time. And I think that's something that we can use to our advantage. The bench every game is really having a strong impact. And Alan, as we move on then to Ireland versus Scotland, it's the first time in 18 years that Ireland have a chance to win a Triple Crown at home. It'll just be unbelievable to do it at home in front of the home fans.
Yeah, it will. It's certainly a great opportunity to finish the Six Nations on a very positive note. We'll obviously be very disappointed if England don't beat France, which is highly is probably the wrong word, but it's pretty unlikely. It looks like France will win a Grand Slam. You'd never know, but for Ireland, winning 4 out of 5 of the games in the Six Nations, I think is a pretty good return. They will be disappointed, but when the years you have France and England away, it's always really difficult. 4 years ago, we won a Grand Slam in this situation, but France are at a different level at the moment, and we ran them very close in Paris. The physicality obviously was an issue, and some of the breakdown issues. So the team is still learning, I think, and they're not in a perfect position, but they must finish on a high against Scotland. If you're in the Scotland camp, Aisling, and Roger have played against them so many times as well, they'll be really, really determined to try and fix their Six Nations. I think they started off brilliantly against England, great home win. Then they went to Cardiff, were very disappointing. Got walloped by France and were very average at times against Italy last week. So people keep saying before every Six Nations, this is the best Scotland team ever, and they're very, very dangerous. They're going to do this, that and the other. They have some very good players, there's no doubt about that, but they're very inconsistent. So they'll be fighting for their lives in Dublin tomorrow, and they're not going to make it easy for Ireland. So Ireland have to be very, very careful here that they don't take their eye off the ball and they just expect that it's a home game, the crowd are going to get behind them, and that they're going to win it. I think they have to improve a lot. The scrum was a big issue last week, and those knock-ons and turnovers. So it'll be really interesting to see what they're like. I think every game is a mental test as well, and you know, we're trying to build towards a World Cup, but obviously win at the same time. That's the perfect scenario. But they've got to be really good tomorrow and really aggressive and physical, because Scotland will certainly throw the kitchen sink at them. Blair Kinghorn is playing at 10. That was the big eye-opener with Finn Russell. Roger probably have a stronger opinion on the fly half position than me, but Finn Russell has been poor in this tournament so far, made a lot of mistakes, and Gregor Townsend didn't want to get into that gesture. So that's a big call to see how that works out. Kinghorn is obviously a running fly half, and he's shown that in the last few weeks against Connacht and Munster as well. So it'll be a really interesting one, but Ireland have got to make sure that they don't underestimate Scotland in any way.
Yeah, big time. I don't think you can ever think that Scotland are going to come out and not put up a big performance. Ronan, can I bring you back to 2010 if you don't mind? It was something that came up in the press conference during the week, and we were just chatting about it when Scotland played Ireland in Croke Park and they got over the line. I think it was 2023 that day. It was the first win in Ireland for over 10 years. Can you bring me back to that day and what it was like for you?
I saw Johnny commenting on it during the week, and I have no recollection. I can remember Dan Parks kicked a conversion from the touchline, so I knew it was a good day for Scotland.
What he's trying to say there, Aisling, it wasn't his fault that Scotland won that game.
No, Ronan, you kicked to go 17-all, didn't you? And you kicked to go 20-all, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
You did.
I remember it was Croke Park, but I was fascinated to get into it. But I never Googled the article after the comments by Johnny. You know, I remember the game. I can remember where I was standing. I think at the end of the game. But you mean that what a big disappointment that was. But yeah, following up on I think earlier in the week, was it Andy Nichol was on the show commenting about the Scottish team, and interestingly, he's a smart guy. He was commenting about I suppose, the regression that the Scotland team have made from a mental point of view, and that's quite interesting, because if Van der Merwe wasn't suspended, they could have 5 potential test Lions playing at the weekend. But I suppose what's interesting for Irish supporters' point of view is the strength of having centrally contracted players. So for people to understand what the union controlling their players looks like is exactly what's happened to Finn Russell in the Six Nations campaign. So between games, he goes back to France to play for his club in Racing. So Sunday night before the France-Scotland game, it was Scotland-France. Scotland were at home. At 9 o'clock on the Sunday night, Finn Russell was talking out for Racing against Bordeaux. He finishes at midnight in Bordeaux, and he's got to get up on a plane from Bordeaux to Paris with his teammates. He gets home at 3 a.m. But what does he do? Does he go back to his apartment for 4 hours to fly at 7 a.m. to Edinburgh to join up with his international colleagues who have a weekend of, recovery, hot and cold baths and, physio, Pilates, whatever, recovery to the 9th degree. And then, he's suffering, and I think he obviously has had his ups and downs with Gregor Townsend, but people have short memories in the fact he gave the Lions a chance to win that 3rd test. He was exceptionally good that day, and now all of a sudden he finds himself, not starting. So that's, if ever there was a concrete example of what looking after your players or keeping control of your players looks like, this is it in a blue jersey. But it's exactly the same for, a Johnny Sexton or a Tyke Furlong or an Ian Henderson. So, that's what I suppose it looks like. I'm looking forward to the game in Paris on Saturday night. I think the French are ready to put on a show. I think they've prepped for this game for a long, long time. They know exactly who their impact replacements are, and I expect them to win with a bonus point.
And how could England get over them? Is there any area that you think that they could exploit to be able to beat France? That's what we want to happen here.
Yeah, you can, exactly, because I just think that there's a lot of people, throwing pies at Eddie Jones, but he masterminded that performance against the All Blacks. I was in that stadium in Japan for that semi-final, and it was a complete exhibition of total rugby when England destroyed New Zealand. Yes, the players are different. I think he doesn't have the backs this time to implement what he would like to do. There are too many, I suppose, inexperienced, unproven people in white jerseys playing in the back line. 50% of the game is defence, so French will put Aldred, they'll put Villiers, they'll put Figu, they'll put Dante down at Marcus Smith. They'll tire him out by that way by having him to make tackles, so he can't kind of orchestrate the English attack, which he's very, very good at. But I think from living here, you just get a sense that this is the big step that they really, I suppose, need to tick off on their way to making a charge at a home World Cup.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for them, for sure. I think everybody thinks the France are going to do it easy enough, but you never know, I suppose, what can happen. And Alan, just the changes then for Ireland in the starting team. We've seen that Ian Henderson is for James Ryan. We knew that. Mac Hansen comes back in. It's Andrew Conway who has a knee injury. Jack Conan comes in for Peter O'Mahony at 8 as well. We've seen him come off the bench at the last 2 games. What did you make of the starting team?
No major surprises. I think obviously Peter O'Mahony will be disappointed, but given where Jack Conan has been in the last 12 to 18 months and his performances and the impact off the bench last week, he's a different type of player than Peter. Ball in hand, particularly in the wider channels, he's brilliant, and he got a great try last week. So it kind of indicates that, Peter, with respect, is incredible in the line-out and breakdown, but Jack Conan is probably a better carrier. So it's back to that back row that was so good in November. And it's kind of horses for courses, and that's the competitive nature of this back row. Peter O'Mahony would be vital coming off the bench. and being part of the group as well. Henderson coming back in, that's a no-brainer. I think he probably would have been disappointed with a couple of penalties last week, and has kind of had no consistent run of matches. So he's a really important player. Andrew Conway, unfortunately, he's picked up a knee injury, but we now have a fair bit of depth in that back three. And Mac Hansen, obviously, the way he started in the first 2 games in the tournament was brilliant, and he offers a real kind of ability to come in off the wing like James Lowe and attack as well and be a playmaker. So they're in a good place. I think I think the scrum situation is obviously that's been clarified. And Ireland didn't do a Rassie Erasmus on it last week and go public with all the scrum penalties, but certainly there was it's slowly dripping out now that some of the decisions were wrong from Matthew Reynal, and I think that's coming out of the review, and that's the feedback Ireland have got back themselves. So it's a dangerous proposition, but this team will be kind of ruthlessly judged if they don't get a performance tomorrow. And I think that not alone have they to win this game, but I think they have to find a performance to finish on a high and really kind of excite people and have optimism about the team going forward. So it's not going to be easy, but the ideal scenario would be a really good performance and attacking rugby in really good conditions tomorrow in Dublin. But the most important game of the weekend, I'd say, is La Rochelle are away to Toulon at 4:15 tomorrow. So we'll have to put some eyes on that as well and press the record button to see how the boss gets on there.
Yes, Ronan, how are you going to fare out?
Big game, chance to go third. We're in 6th at the minute. It's very, very tight. It's been a crazy top 14 campaign this season. But everything to play for. The season gets going on the next 3 months, so I can't wait for it. We got a crucial game tomorrow, and then Six Nations is over. Europe is back on. Top 14 goes on, so it's time to get going.
It's a tough schedule to actually be able to balance. Like, I spoke with Leo Cullen a few times about this, just how you manage to balance the whole thing with Six Nations happening as well.
But it's an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, great opportunity.
You want to see players, and you want to give people game time, and you want to set up as many of them as you can to succeed. So, there's always 2 ways of looking at it. You can find the faults and the negatives and the difficulties with it, but turn it on its head and say, okay, these guys are getting an opportunity, and it's up to them to take it, but you're trying to make sure that they are prepped well to take it.
Yeah, definitely, big time. And so I'll get a few predictions before I let you go. How do you think it's going to go with the weekend? We might do both games, France and England, and the Ireland-Scotland game. Alan, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think Ireland will be mindful of the things I was talking about there, and will win. I'd be disappointed if they don't win comfortably. I think Scottish people who probably will pick up on this and will be listening to see what the Irish pundits are saying. But as I said, Scotland have been pretty inconsistent. So I think Ireland will finish on a high, and it'll be great to win if they do win a Triple Crown. That's really important. Anything less than a good performance, I think it'll be disappointing. And Rog probably knows more about the mood in France. I kind of thought France were poor against Wales last week. They were ruthless against Scotland and Murrayfield, but I just think there's too much momentum with them now, and I think they'll probably save their best performance for the last game. Maybe they'll be a bit nervy. Some of them haven't been in this kind of pressurized situation before, where the silverware on the line. But I think, unfortunately, from an Irish point of view, I think France will possibly be too strong. But England have the forwards probably up front to cause them some issues. So if France revert to just kicking the leather off the ball like they've done at times, and then kind of struck with their X-factor players and their power players, they could be in trouble. They've got to play a bit tomorrow night against England. And look, they've been the best team in the tournament so far, and they're going to be a real threat in 18 months. So it'll be, I think, Ireland and France for me.
Yeah, I think our England are getting better and better with each game, so I hope that's the case again this weekend. And Ronan, what do you think?
Ireland will win with 4 tries and France will win with 4 tries, I think.
Straight to the point, good stuff, what we like. Brilliant, lads. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It's 8:35 a.m. at the moment. We've got a packed show still to come on OTB AM, but up next we're going to be talking GAA.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Still feel as if Everton will have enough to get out of it. Like I said, more of a gut feeling when it comes to Everton. Yeah, it'll be fascinating. There'll be more twists and turns between now and the end of the season. It's great we're still talking about a battle for the title, a battle for 4th place, and of course those 5 teams who it looks like now battling for those 2 remaining places which will keep them in the Premier League.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
And a few players have walked away this year for their own reasons. It's always tough, I'm sure, to see lads leaving the panel.
It is. And, I think it's, people, every life, people come up against things that maybe they have to, deal with or react on and stuff. So, again, just seeing, obviously, a few boys left this year, you wouldn't rule a few of those guys coming back in the future again. Do you know what I mean? But it's it was a big loss to us because they could be massive. They could have made a massive impact on our year this year. And again, maybe not even from a bench point of view, maybe from starting the team as well. So who knows? But at the minute we have a very healthy and competitive squad as well. So we're very lucky with that.
Yes, there's Cathal McShane. I was speaking to him during the week just for the Allianz retro jersey that you're going to see this weekend. It's going to be out for some of the hurling games, the Galway Clare game, and also as well the Tyrone and Mayo game, which is a massive must-win game. I'm joined again by Tommy Rooney. How's it going, Tommy?
Aisling, how are you? Those Tyrone interviews, they're brilliant. They're really, really good. Like you've got some great stuff out of the Tyrone squad over the last 12 months. I'd say you've covered a lot of their games, and I think they're well used to chatting to you. Like McShane was very open throughout that interview. It was very good stuff. Yeah,
and I think that's what helps. Because I was there time and time again. I'm at each and every game. They warm to you. They see you taking interest, and you're there each week. So yeah, definitely I find that the more you're there, the more you're chatting to them, the more open they become. And yeah, he was really open there, which was really nice. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see sort of media trained. I hate that coming into GA, and I think over the last few years anyway, it's starting to creep in a little bit more. And I'm like, no, I don't want us to lose the amateur side of things, even within the media. When you're speaking to the lads, that it's just raw and real, I suppose. And that's exactly what Cathal was like there.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want. It's personality, it's honesty, it's being open and chatting. Look, there is probably a time and a place for keeping your mouth shut, and
big time.
Maybe it's biting your lip immediately after a game when you might not have processed exactly what happened and all of that. But like even some of the interviews that have happened since, like Darren McCurry was speaking this week as well on the GA Social podcast, and it's very interesting that both himself and McShane were open enough about the 6 Tyrone players that have left, because like everyone's looking in there, and I think Finney McMahon was kind of speaking about it last week, and he was saying it looks like there could be issues in Tyrone, but the lads are quite clear about it. Like that, Darren McCurry was saying that he didn't want those lads to leave, and Colin McShane is saying that the door is there open. So it's obviously 6 personal decisions, 6 very different reasons for leaving, I'd say, but they're going to be a loss to that squad.
Big time. And I'd love to know the reasons, if they're personal reasons or there's other things going on within the squad, because when you were speaking to Cathal McShane there, I just felt that he was obviously not telling us everything, because you can't tell us all those personal reasons, I suppose, but there was definitely something more in it, and that they are such a loss. Not just, he was saying, coming off the bench, they're a loss actually for starters on the field. And when you see things like that, it's not that they're retiring or anything like that. They're lads that have just won in All Ireland, so sometimes you can understand when it might be a team that maybe isn't really competing, or when you're sacrificing a hell of a lot. And look, you can understand understand. You really can. But when you see a team who's just won an All-Ireland title and they're hoping to do what Tyrone, has rarely done of a back.
They've never done.
Sorry, it's correct. Yes, of a back-to-back All-Ireland. That is, it's hard to understand, Tommy. It really is.
Yeah, well, it's like the big issue and the big problems they're going to have is those A versus B games, because they must have been ferocious last year. And from listening to some of the dubs talking about it, what brought them, what drove them to 6 All-Irelands in a row, and even the great Kilkenny team of the Naughties, what was driving them was the standards they were setting in training. That Jackie Tyrrell was marking the best full forwards in the country, that Johnny Cooper was marking the best forwards in the country, that the best forwards in the country are being marked by the best defenders in the country, and the standards are being set in their own squad. And I felt like Tyrone last year, we kind of slept on how much depth they had.
Yeah. And
that seems to have been eroded slightly this year. Now, when you're looking at depth across the country, Kerry definitely have it. Mayo definitely have it. And I'm not sure who else would have that strength and depth of a squad, a panel of 30, 35 players. That I might be doing a complete injustice to a couple of panels here, but it certainly feels like Tyrone cannot replace what Tiernan McCann could bring, what Ronan O'Neill could even bring. That's a wild card
experience.
Off the bench. Lee Brennan was a player who had a great league campaign a couple of years ago and has loads of talent, and we just haven't seen it over the last couple of years. So even some of the defenders, Michael Cassidy, there's strength there that you've lost, but I suppose when some of those players have gone through a year where they've been on the periphery, they've been on the outside, it's such an all-consuming, time-consuming game. You mentioned amateur earlier on. It takes up so much of your life that I'd never really hold it against someone stepping away if they can't fully commit to it.
No, and absolutely, and I definitely don't mean that at all. If it is so time consuming. Whenever I speak to any of the players, a lot of the time I'll ask them what does your week look like, and they'll always say, there is 5 to 6 different things on during the week. There's only 7 days during the week, so they're completely consumed, and between having a full-time job, family, whatever it is, it must be extremely hard to balance it all. But even just speaking about the strength and depth in the panel, last year when we spoke about Tyrone, we often talked about their bench and Cathal McShane coming off the bench. That came up literally every time we spoke about it. And he is starting a few more games now, but that isn't really there as much. And it's a 20-person game now. It really is. That's when the game changes if you have those impact subs. And as you said, I'd be a little bit afraid of they maybe don't have that factor as much with these lads stepping away.
Yeah, and I would say that there's an element as well that Tyrone have had patches of matches where they've played quite well, and they just need to pull a result out of the bag now in the next 2 games and stay up. And it's been a decent league campaign for them to have. I think that's a fair point. It was nearly they were nearly lucky last year that Cathal McShane was injured in a way and he wasn't fully fit, because they could kind of it'd be very difficult to keep a fella like that on the bench all the time. Cathal McShane wants to start. Derek Canavan wants to start. It was just that it was the perfect mix last year of, right, lads, you're going to make a massive impact for us. You're going to be our finishers. You're still very important, but we're not going to start you. That's a difficult conversation to have this year if they want to be starting, if they want to be playing from the front. So that's a balance that Jim Gavin got incredibly well during his Dublin tenure, that he was able to call on Kevin McMiniman or a Cormac Costello or a Bernard Brogan or whoever to come off the bench and make an impact in the last couple of minutes. And that was possibly what Mayo were lacking. And maybe that's why we've seen Aidan O'Shea play a couple of games on the bench this year. Or maybe not. O'Shea is starting centre back this weekend. It's just incredible. He's won All Stars in the half forward line, full forward. Did he win one in midfield? He obviously played full back in Kieran Donaghy that time that Stephen Rochford pulled that wild card in 16 or 17. 17. So that's going to be an interesting game this weekend. I'm just going to call out a couple of interesting games actually that I have my eye on.
Yes, absolutely.
Are worth keeping an eye on. Derry Galway are playing in Division 2 this weekend, and I'm
excited for Derry. They're a team this year that last year I said it on Off the Ball. Derry are the ones to watch next year. They were unlucky last year.
Yeah, they definitely were. And I would say that a lot of counties are probably looking on saying, why are Derry being talked about so much? Why is there so much chatter about Derry? I think there's an element that there's the Rory Gallagher factor there, that they're always going to be entertaining. They've had their stars come back from the AFL. I think they've got a nice bit of size about them. They've got, Shane McGuigan, obviously quality footballer. If he had stayed on the pitch the last day against Roscommon, may he have kicked that final score? Probably. But that is going to be a game worth watching, because those two teams have been flying. But sometimes it can be difficult to get a read on form, I suppose, in Division 2. Like, it's hard. Like, those teams want to break into Division 1. We'll see how good they are now when they face each other this weekend. Cork and Down in that division is massive as well. Losers are going to be relegated. Clare and Meath, I think if it finishes a draw, both counties would be happy. They'd be possibly guaranteed safety then. And then Offaly are playing Roscommon too. Offaly in dire need of a result as well. In Division 1, we have Tyrone and Mayo. That's going to be a cracker. That is going to be a belter. We're saying it there. Mayo need a win to get into the league final. Tyrone need a win to stay up. Armagh and Kerry both a shootout for the league final. Kildare Monaghan is going to be a great game too. I know we had a comment there on YouTube. I'll dig it out here from one of our viewers about looking forward to that game. That's a massive game. Like, that's
big
a
time, and there's a lot on the line. Line there, and two teams that at the moment playing good football. Monaghan always have been in Division 1. When I think they have been in Division 1 with Dublin. They're the most consistent team. They've always stayed up there. And I really enjoy Monaghan football as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'd like to see the journey that Kildare are on as well at the minute. It's hard to go to Newbridge and get a win, as we all know. So, I think it'll be a tough game for them. But it's an exciting week. Definitely a weekend of sport. And I'm going to go through the papers here as well. So, on the back pages of the Irish Daily Star, we have free course has the porter flowing. Yes, absolutely. That's Danny Mullins there on the back, just celebrating, and the scenes that we seen in the parade ring after was something else. We're going to be chatting with John Duggan a little bit about all of that. Also, the turn that crown upside down, So that is from Andy Farrell. Desperately wants Ireland to land a first Triple Crown since 2004 with a win against Scotland. That's actually surprising, Tommy, when you read that. 2004. It doesn't seem that long ago.
That's insane. Yeah, no, I hadn't realised that at all.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's mad.
Then we have the Irish Independent, a bit more about the Crow Park yesterday, the schools final. Ardree, the joint captain, Vince Harrington, holds the Crow Park aloft as he celebrates with teammates following his side's victory in the All-Ireland post-primary schools after beating St Kieran's College in Kilkenny. So massive scenes for them. Must be unbelievable celebrations happening there. It's always good with your school to win something like that.
Yeah, it was great for them to get their day as well. I know people are probably missing the club finals, but with the GAA calendar, we've had to move those back. And it was unbelievable for Naas too, winning that Hogan Cup. Like, that was such an unbelievable game of football. Big time. And I know we were missing the finals, but I think it's better off. Like, I genuinely do. I know a lot of people were putting it up on Twitter and stuff and saying, "Oh, we missed it today," but everyone was out enjoying themselves. I'm sure the players got to get out too, and I think it was better, wasn't it? I think so too. Yeah, I just think there's too many ills with that calendar that we're better off just pushing it back earlier into the year. Yeah, big time. Then we have the Herald here. It's mostly Cheltenham on the back as well. We have Park has a warning for Farrell's men. That's Rory O'Connor there. Pogba will let the contract end. Yeah, so a lot about Pogba all over the pages as well this morning. So it's United French midfielder set to become the most high-profile free agent. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, that's a big talking story at the minute, Tommy. Yeah, I'd say United will just have to cut their losses and let him go. Yeah. There's a big clear out needed at Manchester United. I think it's a reset. It just needs to start from scratch. It's unbelievable what we're seeing really at the minute, isn't it? And you think as the further the season went on, you think they'd grab some momentum. They have the players, but just nothing. It's just not clicking whatsoever, is it? No, it's very, very, very difficult. It's not difficult to watch. It's been very difficult to watch for the last 8 years. There's been decent times. There's been a couple of areas when they've been kind of exciting, but most of the football over the last 8 years has been just horrendous to watch. Yeah. A complete clear it is absolutely needed. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not a Man United supporter. I'd say it is seriously tough at the minute. And then lastly, we have the Irish Daily Mail. It is about Lampard Lifeline. That was a brilliant 99th minute goal, secured a crucial 1-0 win, 10 minutes then Everton over Newcastle. That was something else. Oh, that was massive. Yeah, that was massive. Lampard needed that big time. He needed that for sure. Yeah, there's a couple of big relegation games this weekend in the football as well. So we'll have a reaction on Monday's OTB AM to all of that. Happy days. Well, thanks for the moment, Tommy. We'll chat to you again in a few minutes, sure. And now we're going to throw to Cathal McShane.
Well, just it's to be honest, it's something out there that maybe is said or spoke about, but for ourselves, we just sort of focus on doing our best, and And, obviously giving our opponents a tough game, tough battle. And, from watching Tyrone teams over the years, just looking back to even that clip that goes around with Tyrone and Kerry and Croke Park, and there's maybe 8 or 9 tackles within, a certain period of time, that just epitomises maybe what Tyrone are about. But and you just have to be doing it within the rules and sticking to it. And obviously every player is doing their best and putting their bodies in the line to ensure that we get the best results for Tyrone.
And even after that red card, then you had probably the best period of the game with 14 men, so that was really positive.
That's it. We when you look back, you can see that although we were, overall disappointed with our performance, there's still big positives to take away. And at the end of the day too, there was only 5 points in it. A couple of kicks of the ball in it towards the end. Now that's, don't get me wrong, that's probably papering over some issues that we had because we didn't perform well. But maybe if we had a few decisions had went our way early on, we had the goal as well ruled out. But if that had happened, then it would have given us a better chance. But it didn't. So we can't worry about that. We just need to focus now going forward and going one better the next day out.
Yeah, and it is early days yet. You do hear people saying it's not the Tyrone of last year. What do you think when you hear people say that? Because last year you didn't have the best start. You got a tough defeat to Kerry, and then you went on and won the All-Ireland.
Yeah, well, listen, for us, it's just about we have to be sure that what we're doing in camp is correct, and that's the way we're looking at it. We just worry about what happens within Garvahe and the training field, and when we go out to play matches. And I can see that I was working hard in training, and it probably hasn't clicked yet, to be honest, this year. And there's lots of factors you take in. Just this, league football this time of the year. Obviously, last year was, it was very competitive, and it probably took a lot out of the squad and stuff. And then we went straight back into our clubs as well, and that ran on into mid-November, December time. So it's been a short enough turnaround getting back on the board or getting back on the field this season. Sorry, and then it's just a matter now of really trying to step it up a level or two and go one more.
And do you think it will click in time? Because obviously the championship is coming around a lot faster, I suppose, than it would have last year.
You have to believe it. You have to believe it will, because every man's working hard. And don't get me wrong, we can increase our performance levels and we can go and give that extra few percent, and that's what we'll be aiming to do. And as I say, there's no better opportunity to do it this weekend. Like Mayo is a formidable outfit, and they're stronger than they were last year as well. So that's a big challenge that we know we have to be ready for.
And then for yourself as well, then you played very much that impact sub-role last year. It was really effective. This year you're starting more games. Is that a conversation that you've had with Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan to want to feature more from the start?
I think it is. I think for every footballer, they don't come into a squad or don't be part of a squad if they think they're just going to maybe sit in the background and just play a bit part type of thing. Every man wants to be challenged and putting on the starting jersey. But at the minute we do have a really competitive squad, and I know for me it's just about focusing and getting minutes, getting game time, and really building, getting that confidence back. Because obviously since I come back from injury, I have been came on as that sub role last year and it worked really well. Now this year it's just a matter of trying to push and get back to those levels maybe back in 2019. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. We need to keep working and keep trying hard, and hopefully that those days will come again soon.
And was it tough at times playing that sort of role? I know you're really unbelievable at it. Like, you actually finished off a lot of the games, and just like that All-Ireland final. But was it tough sometimes, sort of on edge, watching from the sideline, wishing you're out there?
It's definitely not easy watching from the sideline, and I didn't realise that probably going back to the club when I was injured as well. Just watching the club play as well is so difficult. I used to wonder why people were shouting on the field and stuff, but once I sort of got an experience of that myself, I was like, now I know. But even just then, from obviously being on the bench with Tyrone last year, it was kind of, you had to prepare differently, and just sort of you're not really getting really psyched up at the very beginning. You're just ready to sort of come on, and you need to be ready at that moment in time. And that's kind of something that I played about with at the start, but I think I nailed it quite towards the end for the important times. And it was frustrating at times, but again, you were just sort of knowing that you're coming on to help the team make the impact, and I was just happy to do that as well.
Yes, Colin McShane there chatting to me earlier in the week just about how things are going at the moment in Tyrone. And yeah, they've got a big game this weekend against Mayo, so we'll wait and see how that one goes. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now by Jess McFadyen from motorsport.com. Hello Jess, it's nice to talk to you.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, great to be here.
Good morning. Are you excited for the season ahead?
Yes, it's a weird feeling. It's been like the shortest off season ever. So between last season and this season has been a really short amount of time. And obviously we've had so much going on in the world of F1 in that time. It almost feels a bit like whiplash that we're going back racing already. But it's all new this season. So there's so much to unpack, even just from the few days that we've had at Bahrain already. We've not even had any proper on-track action yet. So it's a good start to 2022.
And do you feel a different buzz this year? I think Formula One has gone on to a different height after last year. Obviously, the title race was something else. Whether you were Team Lewis or Team Max, it was just sensational from the start to the end, the whole season, really. Is there a different buzz around it now?
Yeah, I think there are still some headaches that are rolling on from last season. But as you said, the fact that it was so competitive up until the very last corner of the very last lap, this season has got a lot to live up to. And we're about to enter a brand new era of Formula One. So not only do we have the precedent of last year, we've now got brand new looking cars. We've got people in different teams this year. There's a lot going on. Even the race weekend format this year has changed. So today, I'm still getting my head around it. It's all been a bit different and a bit topsy-turvy. So today is a brand new format. So all the media sessions are happening this morning, and then this afternoon we get a first look at the cars on track and hopefully seeing their real potential, because we've had two pre-season tests where we've seen the cars get shaken down and kind of see, maybe we can guess what the pecking order is. But this afternoon we should really get a sense of who might be on the ball and who's not.
Yeah, there's a lot going on and some new rules as well thrown in there, and we're going to get to chatting all about that as well. But something that I thought was interesting as well during the week, just with the press conferences, I heard Lewis just speaking about how you learn so much more from obviously what happened to him coming in second place, that you learn and you grow. Do you think that he's sort of thriving on all of this now and that he likes it? There's this bit of competition for him?
I think he's been genuinely asking for a worthy competitor for quite a few seasons now. I think the last time he was challenged as much as Max Verstappen challenged him last season was when we had Nico Rosberg as his teammate. So there has been a bit of a period of, he's had some great run-ins, the competition between him and Sebastian Vettel when Vettel was at Ferrari in kind of 2018. That was a really close showing. But Lewis Hamilton had to dig deep and find that extra edge that we know he's got, but maybe has been a bit sleepy for the past few seasons. So, and I think the Mercedes team ethos is very much, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, which for an 8-time constructors title winning team may be easier to say than actually live through. But I do really believe that their team ethos is very much surrounded by that you can rise from your defeats, but you don't learn much in success. So they're quite humble like that, even if they have basically beaten almost every F1 record going. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, because Mercedes do look like they're slightly on the back foot already. So it's going to be how they manage that and whether they can be competitive and bring another title race to Max.
And with Mercedes, we see the new pairing, which is really interesting. Bottas, he was such a good teammate. I think that was something that he did so well. Like, he sacrificed a lot at times for Lewis.
100%. He was Lewis Hamilton's dream teammate. Didn't really challenge him too much, but still did enough to mean that they brought home the Constructors' Championship. So it is going to be a weird dynamic, because George Russell has been wanting this shot ever since he entered into Formula One. So 3 seasons now. This is his 4th season. And he desperately wants to be challenging for world titles. He's an extremely successful driver in the junior categories, pretty much won everything going. And he entered into Formula One in a backmarker team. So he's got a point to prove. And it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out between the very successful 7-time world champion and this new driver in terms of someone who could be winning world championships.
Yeah, I think that's something everybody's going to have a close eye on. And then for Max Verstappen, then it's sort of fresh pressure to defend a title rather than having to chase one like he always has been.
Yeah, and interesting, Fernando Alonso, who himself is a 2-time world champion, came out and said that the pressure's off now. He's won it. So, he doesn't really have a point to prove. And Max has always been very pragmatic about stuff like this. He's, in his mind, whether or not this is true or not, because Max doesn't often let you into his psyche and the way that he's thinking. He's very guarded about that. He's like, well, I've completed Formula One now, so I'm just out here having fun. Whether or not that actually plays out, if it gets tight, I don't think so. But it is quite difficult to defend a world title. Before the dominance of Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, it didn't happen. So it is going to be interesting. But that Red Bull does look like they've brought a very, very good package. So it could be that Max is a very happy boy this season.
And how has testing gone for them?
Yeah, testing has been very, very interesting. We've got a brand new era of car, as we've said, so nobody really knows how the cars are going to properly act out on track until we got track running. And there's been a lot of kind of cloak and dagger, especially at the top teams. Red Bull came out on the final day of testing with a brand new side pod setup that obviously set us with our cameras snapping, trying to guess what they were doing. So they've kept their cards very close to their chests and kind of only left it to the last minute to see the full package that they've been bringing, which has been really interesting. We've always had that in testing. No one really wants to show their hand until the first race weekend, but there was a lot of that. I mean, we had Mercedes reveal their side podless car, which is a completely different interpretation of the rules, which is, it gives us column inches to write about on the tech side, which is brilliant. But yeah, it does from what we saw in terms of, because what we're looking for testing is reliability. So how many laps are they putting in? Are they breaking down? Are they having any issues? Red Bull's had a pretty much clean running, like nothing. They topped the timesheets, they put in lots of laps. So they were looking particularly strong. Whereas the likes of Mercedes, we're kind of sat here going, I think they've got maybe a bit of work to do to make that W13 drivable. So it's kind of been the great thing is that from about 5th backwards, we have no idea. Like none. Everybody keeps asking us, give us your top 10 in terms of team pecking order. And we can kind of all maybe semi-agree on the top 4, but then 5th to 10th, we're like, it's anybody's game, which is great. But we also want that at the top of the field. But it does look like we have more teams closer to the front that could be in contention for race wins, which is great.
And just in Formula One, like during the testing, is there mind games that goes on? Because obviously we're talking about Mercedes not really being up to scratch, but do they do this on purpose a little bit to hold back and not obviously show their full hand?
Yeah, so sandbagging, as we call it, is definitely something that you see in testing. But from the conversations that people have had at track, from what we've heard from the team principals, I don't think that's the case at Mercedes.
Okay,
I really don't think. I think there's more to it. I think we've had things where they physically sawed off parts of their front wing to try and increase airflow around the car. So they're doing things like taking tools to bits of bodywork and trying to manipulate them. And we've had McLaren had brake problems. They couldn't cool down their brakes. So they were super quick, but they couldn't slow down the car. So, we definitely have had storylines where I don't think anybody's holding back here. Now, we have had instances, probably the most famous was in 2009 with Brawn GP, where they turned up and they purposefully went very slowly because they couldn't believe just how well they'd got their setup together. And they ended up absolutely dominating that season and winning. It's one of the great stories of Formula One, Brawn GP and Jenson Button's title-winning year. But it's a
Looks like we just lost Jess there for a moment. I think it was coming and going for the last few minutes. It was touch and go. It's very interesting to hear that about the Formula One, and I'm no expert by any means, but I would think that there is mind games that goes on, because just like if you're going out, maybe in the league, we could, an example for GAA, that you don't show your full hand, that you try things out and you maybe give other players a chance and all of these things. And I'm sure with Formula One, they don't want to go out and show their best side, their best car, all of their attributes that, they want to hold things back to be able to push on and really to win. And yeah, it's unbelievable. But Jess is something else. She really has all the insight for us. And we're going to be chatting as well just about the rule changes. I think that's really a big talking point as well at the minute, because last year, obviously, we seen in the last lap what happened with the safety car, and I think they've changed the wording of that. So we're going to be chatting away to just hear how that goes. But I don't know if we're going to be able to get Jess back, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll definitely have another chat with her again soon, because it's really interesting to hear all about it. But now we're going to go over live, to John Duggan in Cheltenham. But first, we're going to go to the ads.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Imagine actually having a team of Galton, Miedema, Russo and Black Sunnis together.
Keep up to date with the latest WSL action and the biggest interviews.
It was already a goal. The ball had crossed the line.
It wasn't even a question. It was about a metre and a half, and they didn't even appeal.
I suppose 92nd minute. I've never scored a 92nd minute winner. I don't know what it feels like.
Subscribe to the Koi Gig podcast stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
I haven't time for hurling. No. Hey. He's too outspoken about hurling, you know. He thinks he was a legend of all time. But he's just from Capital. My little nephew. Hey, I'm his uncle now. He's my nephew. He's my nephew now. No. Look, this is what dreams are made of. I'm so proud of my uncle. I'm so proud of my uncle, cousins, uncles. I'm delighted.
Yeah. How great is it on Patrick's Day?
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is ridiculous. Stuff for dreams, isn't it?
And not there last year.
Not there last year. No crowds last year. Boys couldn't do it, and here we are today. Stuff for dreams. Walking in there's only one Rory O'Connor singing a song in the little wonderland. There's only one Rory O'Connor. There's only one Rory O'Connor. Hey, running along, coming up the hill in Cheltenham.
Wow, amazing scenes there in Cheltenham for Danny Mullins and for all the syndicate there involved with Flooring Porter. Good morning, John.
Aisling, how are we doing?
Good. That is just amazing. That is what sport is all about, isn't it?
Well, you can have your big owners and your millions and all that kind of thing, but Flooring Porter is what racing is all about, isn't it, Aisling? Like, the colours are a pint of plain, black and white. Mm-hmm. There was an ad on Facebook from Gavin Cromwell, a trainer, asking people to see if they want to invest in horses a few years ago. And these lads, a syndicate from South Roscommon, Galway, 4 lads, the Sweeneys, who were involved in a pub, and Ned Hogarty, who's involved in the flooring business, carpets and pints. And they bought the horse for a few grand. It wasn't an extravagant purchase, and the horse has just turned into a bit of a freak. And they've all used that phrase, so that's not an unusual phrase for horse racing. He just keeps on winning and winning and winning. He won the race last year, no crowds, as we know, the Stairs Hurdle. And then yesterday, it was just fantastic to see. First of all, before the race, they were all gathered in a huddle in the kind of paddock area. And then when he came in through the winner's enclosure, it was just bedlam. And Danny Mullins was put on the shoulders of James Cathal from the hurling pod. The hurling pod took over Cheltenham.
Yeah, he's not coming back. He said he's done. It's all horse racing from now on. It was unbelievable. And I think Danny Mullins as well, that's a great story in itself. Even over the last year and a half, like, he's really come into his own, and it was a great ride. Like, the way that he held him back, he sort of brought him back to the pack. He was really, like, taken off in front. He held him back, and he just really timed it well coming up to that straight.
It's so hard to do, Aisling, in a 3-mile race over hurdles to go from the front, because horses generally need to stay to win that race. So usually you're a sitting duck. So he was able to judge the fractions of the race perfectly. It's probably the ride of the season. And then we would have said that about Rachel Blackmore on Tuesday in the champion hurdle, the way she was so confident on Honeysuckle. But yesterday, they were then just stacking up behind, and then they put the pressure on, but then he had more and more and more. And I asked him, did he know they were behind? And he just knew they were, and then he knew how much he had up that finishing hill. And the hill is much steeper in the flesh here, Aisling and Cheltenham, as you would see on TV.
And even as a horse, he's not a hell of a lot to look at, John, but my God, he gets the wins.
No, he's a bit quirky. He's a bit of a strange animal in terms of his temperament at times. Like, he threw away his chance of Punchestown last year. So Gavin Cromwell has done a great job, both to have him here a year on. It's not easy with horses getting injuries quite easily. And then to go and win it again. And he's a horse that just needs to have quiet handling. And Danny Mullins, as you said, rode him with supreme confidence. And that's the way he's been riding all season.
Yeah, it is. It's an unbelievable story. And you're actually speaking with Danny Mullins, and we're going to have a listen to that now.
It's a fantastic day, you know. Florin Porter, great little horse, big performance to win at this stage. The reception we got afterwards was fantastic.
I saw you in a plane with Sean Flanagan recently. I'd say this was an even bigger thrill.
Yeah, you know, this lad is nearly as big an airplane as Sean's, so you know, these are the days it's all about.
And last year, no crowds. Look, it was great to have a festival then, but this year, the reception was just off the scale.
It was, you know, to win at Cheltenham is what it's all about, and for the syndicate, you know, to be here and enjoy it this year, they really got to enjoy that, and that's as good a reception as you'll see after a race.
This is what it's all about as well, isn't it? You have your big owners and they're important for the game, but the small syndicates like a pub and a carpet shop and lads from the West, that's the lifeblood of racing.
That's it, you know, and for the lads, you know, to be able to buy a horse like him and mix it with the best, it's what racing's all about, and fantastic to see it.
Talk to us about the race itself, because obviously you were in the van, you were in the front, and like last year.
Yeah, everything went fairly straightforward, you know, got away handy, kept jumping all the way, and galloped out strongly. Yeah, good.
Did you know they were stacking up behind you?
I could hear them, yeah, you know, even the first circuit, I knew I was a couple of lengths clear down the back straight, and we went a strong gallop. I got to stack up and let him roll again.
How do you judge it then when you're coming to the last, for example, of how much you have in the tank and the feeling that you might have this race in the bag?
I get into the furlong pole with a lot of petrol left in Cheltenham. It's a special feeling, you know, after going that gallop. You need a good horse underneath you to be doing that.
So the reception, they put you on their shoulders?
Yeah, the ride in the shoulders was a little bit more wobbly than the ride in the race, but, you know, to be part of those celebrations is fantastic.
You're not going to get tired of this winner for a while, but you got Tornado Flyer in the Gold Cup on Friday, Danny, and this horse won the King George, which is normally one of the key trials, so you'd have to think he might have got an each-way chance.
I think he's definitely got an each-way chance. You know, the way he hit the line in the King George says he has every chance of seeing out the extra few furlongs in the Gold Cup, and, you know, we'll give it a good rattle. I've plenty of faith in Tornado.
Yes, an exciting day at Cheltenham, John. It is Gold Cup Day. It's a massive day in the racing calendar. What can we expect?
I expect we will be having more Irish winners by the end of the week than the UK, but it's only 11-10 at the moment, so it's been closer now. They had only 5 winners, the British contingent last year, so to have 10 is good, and it's good for the competitiveness of the game that they've had these winners. But I'd expect we will be ahead by the end of the day. I'd expect an Irish Gold Cup winner. I think Protector Ash and Royal Pagaille have work to do for the home contingent to win the Gold Cup, so I'd be confident the Gold Cup will come back to Ireland after Manella Indo won it last year and was brought to Waterford with Henry de Bromhead and Jack Kennedy riding it then. I'll go through each race here. We'll start with the half one. Now, the going, as we saw on Wednesday, Aisling turned heavy. Then it became a little better yesterday with the drying ground. They were using a new course. There's 2 courses at Cheltenham. There's an old course and then there's a new course on the inside, and the new course is a more galloping track, and you have to really stay the Gold Cup trip. Jumping is not as much of a premium on the new course as it is in the old course, but the ground is drying out all the time here, so I'd expect it to be on the soft side of good today, but they did race it yesterday, so that might make it a little bit gluey and a bit sticky for the horses. So the half one is the Triumph Hurdle. I wouldn't recommend a bet on this race. It's a difficult one to work out. Vauban won the last time at Leopardstown. He's got a lot of speed. Willie Mullins, I think, is confident he will improve for that. And when I met Willie Mullins last week at Leopardstown, he gave me 2 bankers, Alaho and Faisal Vega, and they both won already, and they're confident about Vauban. That probably should say enough. But it's a juvenile race, 4-year-olds. These horses at that age can be in and out in terms of their form. Gordon Elliott has got a couple in his Fieldor, who was very good earlier in the season, and Pied Piper, who's won here over the course and distance at Cheltenham. Both have chances. Il Était Temps hadn't run until he ran at Leopardstown last time, and he was third, and he's definitely one to have on the right side in the future. But once again, Paul Tannen, the stable jockey, has chosen Vauban. There's a couple of English challengers, Porticello, Knight Salush, Dr. Parnassus, Lunar Power for Noel Meade. I'd say it's going to go to one of the front 3, Vauban, Pied Piper or Fieldor, but I wouldn't recommend a bet on it. The 210 then is the County Hurdle. There's a horse called State Man who ran at Christmas at Leopardstown and fell. This is a handicap, so what they try to do here is frame the weights that the jockeys carry on their back so that all the horses theoretically have an equal chance. But State Man probably hasn't shown his best form yet, and that's why he's the favourite in the betting. And I do think he's ahead of his mark, as it were. So State Man, but you're talking about a race that's got, 26 runners, 2 miles over Cheltenham. They're going to be going mad clip.
You don't know what can happen.
Well, that's it. It's hold on for dear life. You have to be lucky in running. Like, a horse can be brought down in front of you. You could fall. You could be hampered. It's not as simple as State Man just turning up and winning. So there's loads of horses with chances. Surprise Package won the Imperial Cup last weekend. I Like to Move It has been running consistently in handicap hurdles. West Cork won over the course and distance earlier in the season. Might Make Mozzie. Gavin Cromwell had a big winner for Porsche yesterday, and he likes this horse, Might Make Mozzie. He's a decent price. The one I'm going to go for each way is Colonel Mustard. It's nothing to do with Cluedo now, Aisling. It's not going to be with the lead piping in the billiard room. But Colonel Mustard, Lorna Fowler trains this one. He's been running in graded races behind the likes of John Bond, Sir Gerhard, and they've ran well already at the festival this week. So Colonel Mustard is around a 7-1 shot. I think he's the each way play against State Man today. That is the County Hurdle at 210. The 250 is the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. Once again, you have 19 runners. This is a very difficult race to work out because there's a load of potential. You've had, I remember Bertie's Dream winning this at 33-1. You had Minella Indo, the Gold Cup winner, won this at 50-1 this race a few years ago. It's a very difficult race to work out. This is not, once again, a betting race that I would be getting involved in. Let's go through them. Hillcrest is all over a chaser for the future. Hillcrest, the favourite in the colours of the late Trevor Hemmings. But once again, earlier in his career trying to win this, it could be difficult. Ginto for Gordon Elliott as a consistent horse in Ireland. Manella Kakuna I really like, but I think he'll be a better horse next year. The Nice Guy, obviously, as I am. Sean O'Keefe rides him. He's got a lot of potential. Haven't seen the best of him, possibly. He could have an each way chance. Sean Trills for Henry de Bromhead. Bardenstown Lad is a consistent horse. If I was going to pick a couple each way at massive prices, and the reason why they're massive prices is that they could flop. Yeah. But Eric Bloodaxe, Joseph O'Brien talking about Eric Bloodaxe on I think it was a preview of the Breeders' Cup on Off the Ball Saturday about 6 months ago. And I said, give me one horse to follow for the season. And he said, Eric Bloodaxe. Horse won at Limerick at Christmas. Fits the trends. Was desperately disappointing the last day. So he might have gone at the game, Eric Bloodaxe. But at 28-1, 33-1, he might be worth 50 cent each way or €1 each way. The other one is a complete... Ramillies is just... They were raving about Ramillies in Willie Mullins' yard all last year as a brilliant bumper horse. And he never did it on the track, really. He's 33-1 with Brian Cooper in the saddle. He won last time out. He doesn't have any respect for the hurdles whatsoever. But if Ramillies stays, he could be the complete fly in the ointment in this one. So, once again, it's a €1 each way race, and it's a difficult one to work out. The 410, we'll get to the Gold Cup at the end here. The 410 is the Hunter's Chase. The one I like here is Winged Leader. Barry O'Neill from Wexford has ridden, I think, over 500 winners in point-to-points. And this is where the point-to-points jockeys come. But he's never had a winner at Cheltenham. He just got Rama a few years ago, who's so close. And Winged Leader is about second favourite, about 5-6-1. Won last time, beat Bill away by 12 lengths at Thurles. He's an improving horse for the Northern Ireland trainer, David Christie. He's only 8 years of age, which is quite young for Hunter's Chases. I think if Winged Leader can get into a rhythm, he might have a squeak of being in the frame there for Barry O'Neill. I'd love to see him ride a winner at Cheltenham in the Hunter's Chase. In the 450, this is the Mare's Chase. Concertista is a very good horse. I just don't know if she stays. She was harried out of it in the Mare's Hurdle over the same distance, 2.5 miles last year. Ellie May was second in this last year. Mount Ida is the hot favourite for Gordon Elliott, but this horse does tend to hit one. The one I'm going for each way is Zambella, is the English challenger for Daryl Jacob, another Wexford jockey, riding for Nigel Twiston-Davies. Is a brilliant jumper. She was either fell or brought down in the race last year when creeping into contention. She's been running really well all the season. I think Zambella is a good each way play, about 12-1. The last race, my nap of the day, is in this. It's Adamantly Chosen, who is going to be ridden by Richard Deegan for Willie Mullins. About a 6-7-1 shot. Once again, a bit like State Man, I think he's got a bit in hand on the handicapper. This is the race Willie Mullins targets with his stars of the future. Galop on the Champs, you saw yesterday, won this easily last year.
Yeah.
Don Poety won this race before. You had Kilulta Vic winning this race. This is the race, Sur des Champs. Willie Mullins targets this race with a horse that could be his one for the future. And this horse won one of the big bumpers at Punchestown last year, the Goffs Land Rover bumper. So he's one in the big field. If he stays the trip, Adamantly Chosen, I think, could be ahead of the handicapper, about 7-1 each way is my nap of the day. And then it's Gold Cup time. So it's a hard one to work out, Aisling. It's a difficult one to work out. 22 fences, 3.25 miles, 3:30. We know the kind of roll of honour back through the years. Arkle won it 3 times. We Best Mate won it 3 times. Album Photo a couple of times. Yeah. Photo Star a couple of times. Dawn Run, the mare in 1986. Who could forget that Desert Orchid, the grey in 1989. Such a rich history, this great steeplechase, the blue ribbon of the game. 100 years, in 2 years' time, this is the 1924 was first run. So what are the storylines here? There's a few storylines. I suppose we go through the card here.
Yep.
Album Photo has won it twice, 10 years of age now. Willie Mullins hasn't been too happy with him. I'm not so sure. He still tends to make a mistake in his races. Maybe Father Time is against Album Photo. Although Sean Flanagan and Conor Dwyer on the Saturday panel last week both liked him as an each way play for this race in the Gold Cup. Not to win. I think they both went for Manila Indo. But Album Photo, I don't know if time is against him. A 10-year-old has not won the Gold Cup since 1998. Plutar is a class horse of the race. And if he's improved at all since last year, he wins under Rachel Blackmore. What a story it would be for Rachel and Henry de Bromhead to win the Gold Cup after winning the champion hurdle on Tuesday. The only thing I'm concerned about is the yard is not as sparkling as it was. Now, Honeysuckle won on Tuesday, but the yard is not as sparkling as it was last year. Journey with Me and Bob Ollinger did not run as well as I think they could have this week, even though Bob Ollinger won. So Plutarch, I also don't know if he stays. He's running a Ryanair chase in the Gold Cup of the Festival. He hasn't won either one. So Plutarch for me might find one too good, but he's a class horse of the race. And if he shows what he showed at Haydock, he definitely has every chance of winning. Asterion Forlange falls too many times for my liking. I also don't think he stays the trip, but he'd be cruising at the top of the hill. I don't think he stays. I Wright is outclassed. Chantry House was pulled up at the King George, and finished tired the last day. He does have horse form, so it wouldn't be an absolute sensation if he won, but I think he's more of an each-way chance than a win chance. Galvin is a stayer. Galvin, obviously trained by Gordon Elliott. It would be a redemption story. We know Gordon was banned this time last year. If Gordon won the Gold Cup for a second time, he's won it with Don Cossack before. Galvin's won over the festival over a longer distance. He beat a Plutarch at Leopardstown at Christmas. We know if Galvin's there coming to the last in contention, he'll probably win because he will stay better than it.
And do we know, John, if Davy Russell, will he be on board? Do we have any word on that?
I think we're confident that he will be. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And Davy's got a great tune out of the horse who was bred in County Clare. Manila Indo, last year's winner. Would he prefer better ground? Possibly. Robbie Power's on him this year. I think that Manila Indo, he flopped in the King George at Kempton, and I don't think he's been shown the same sparkle as last year. Protectorat for Dan Skelton, hasn't run for months. Could be an improver. Could be like he won so well at Aintree. The only thing about Protectorat, he hasn't faced this class of horse before, but he is the potential improver of the field. Royal Pagaille, I think, needs deeper ground. I don't think he's good enough. Santini, once again, a bit like Album Photo, I think his best days are behind him. And the one I'm going to go for, the very last one, Aisling, in the numbers, Tornado Flyer, number 11, Danny Mullins.
Danny Mullins, what a story that would be, John.
It would be. Willie Mullins, it's all about the yards in form, and Willie Mullins is the yard most in form at the moment. He's had 5 winners, I believe, at the festival so far. Tornado Flyer won one of the key trials for the race, the King George. Now, everybody said, well, the race fell apart because Frodon and Manila Indo went too fast in front, and Tornado Flyer just picked everybody off. But Tornado Flyer, if he stays, it's an if, but if he stays, if he's there or thereabouts, his stamina, he's always looked like staying in races. He was third in the bumper here. He was third in the Ryanair last year. And if Danny Mullins can get him into a position where he has got into a rhythm, he also has a tendency to hit one. I'm just chancing it about 11 or 12 to 1 that Tornado Flyer could reach the frame. But Plutarch, the class horse in the race, Gavin's the stayer. Tornado Flyer is the one I'm going to go for.
Yeah, for me, when I was looking at the race card, I was thinking Galvin. It'd just be an unbelievable story for Davy Russell, for Gordon Elliott. I wouldn't mind seeing the Gold Cup come back to County Meath as well. That'd be a nice little story in there too. But yeah, as you said, it's hard to know. You don't know what's going to happen in a race like this. But yes, it's unbelievable. And John, for you, it's 20 years now that you're reporting at Cheltenham. That's incredible. When I seen you tweet that during the week, I actually couldn't believe it's been that long. It's quite amazing. How has it been, I suppose, from the start to now? What differences have you seen?
The big difference is the Irish dominance of the festival. That's the big thing that I've seen. And it's really still something I can not really get my head around, because I grew up, when I was 7 years of age, Don Run won the Gold Cup. It was the front story on the news channel, not the sports. It was the 6-1 news was Don Run winning the Gold Cup, because back then a lot of people had to emigrate and leave Ireland and didn't want to leave. And for Don Run to win the Gold Cup or Isterbrack to win the champion hurdle, it was a source of pride for a lot of people that we were showing our best of sport on the international stage. And we know with flat racing, Aidan O'Brien has done that. Vincent O'Brien before him. They've gone around the world and they've won big races, the Melbourne Cup and all the races, the Breeders' Cup and the Epsom Derby and that. And Irish horses at jumps meetings have done the same. But it was like 24 years between Grand National wins, 75 to 99. And when I went to Cheltenham first, Aisling, it was so intimidating. It was just, you really felt like an underdog. You felt like, as a member of the press, you felt like I'm at a place here that is just the big leagues. And to see Ireland win 23 races, obviously none of us were here last year, but even 2017 we won 19. It's a reflection, I suppose, in one way of how Ireland has progressed as a country. Because 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we'd be selling all these horses because we couldn't afford to keep them. And now all the big owners, all the money has come in, and Ireland is a forward place when it comes to sport and racing. Generally, the best horses come out of our country and France as well. So I think it's a maturity from an Irish point of view, and we've been able to showcase our best jockeys, owners, horses, and trainers over the last 20 years. So that's the biggest change. Is Ireland has conquered Cheltenham. And that's not a bad way to round off 2 decades. So I'm hoping that will continue in the Gold Cup today. Yes, absolutely. And this week for you, how has it gone? I know you had a bit of a slow start, but you're hoping this is it now, this last day, you're going to pull it out of the bag for us, John? Well, one thing as well I've never done over 20 years, Aisling, is drink. So my tips have been almost driving me to drink, to be honest, over the first 3 days. It's been such a cold snap, and you just don't know when that you're going to have a cold snap. No. I've had a great run here of I think about 14 years profit, of 8 years profit out of the last 11. So you're going to get years when it doesn't go to plan. So all I'll say to anybody out there is just be aware that my tips are cold. Just make sure you go each way. Don't do it in city. Never bet more than you can afford anyway. But last year I had the last 2 winners, and that's you want to go to otbsports.com. I've gone for wins only to try to get into profit, but what I'm recommending to anybody out there is make sure you go each way in these races, because I've got a specific strategy which doesn't mirror what everybody else should be doing. So that's just my madness here. So I'm hoping, but hopeful rather than confident, I think is the best thing I can say, Aisling. Yeah, and you've given us a few good each way bets there as well. So I wrote them all down. I'm sure we'll get them up online as well for everybody to see. Well, John, enjoy it the last day. Have a good one, and hopefully we'll be successful. Thanks, Aisling. Take care. Thanks, John. Yeah, brilliant to hear John there, live from Cheltenham on the last day, Gold Cup day, which is always a brilliant day in the racing calendar. Well, that's it from the Friday's OTB AM. Thanks a million for everybody for tuning in. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Off the Ball is live across the weekend, of course, from 1 p.m. on Saturday and 1 p.m. on Sunday. OTB AM will be back live at 7:30 a.m. on Monday morning. For now, we're leaving you with some more rugby. It's the latest episode of the Six Nations Show. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're very welcome along to this St. Patrick's Day edition of the Six Nations Show as we preview the crescendo of the 2022 Championship. Delighted to be joined in studio by the Irish Independent's Rory O'Connor. Rory, thanks for braving the elements, the parade and the revellers and all that kind of stuff.
The elements are fine. It's fairly hairy out there though. Didn't have only a short commute to come, but it was different to normal. Town is bedlam out there, so I think this is the calmest place in Dublin right now. So
I think it's still the best case scenario compared to the last couple of St Patrick's Days.
Definitely, absolutely. No, it's nice to see it. It's a bit of a shock to the system, but good preparation for Saturday, I guess. Hopefully there'll be plenty out and about on Saturday as well for the big game.
Absolutely, and there once was a time where beating England by a record margin in Twickenham would lead to a parade of similar proportions maybe, but the reaction has been interesting in its way that almost from the jump there's been certain people, Eddie O'Sullivan most notably, but several people, almost 50% I would say, falling down on the side of, there's possibly more shortcomings from that performance than you might typically take from a winning victory like that. Almost a week on, where do you fall down on it?
Yeah, I think that everything's contextualised by the fact that England had a man sent off after less than 90 seconds, and you would expect Ireland to manage. What I would look at is put yourself in the shoes of say New Zealand or South Africa, and the company Ireland want to keep in World Rugby. What would they have done against England for 78.5 minutes against 14 men? You would expect them to handle it better, to not have a scrum go into complete meltdown against 7 forwards and a back, to not lose their way and have senior players giving away penalties along the way. And Ireland have reached a point now where we expect certain things of them. They've had a very good November. They've had quite a good Six Nations without maybe getting to that height. But they are one of the top teams in the world. And I would say that the way they handled certain elements of that game were not impressive. And yet they came good. They wrested momentum back. So they deserve a claim for that. But I think it's a mark of how highly we regard this Ireland team that we weren't as impressed with that win as we might have been in other eras. But the 14 men is a big deal. You can't take it out. I know people can point to examples of teams coping well with 14 men in different scenarios. Ireland and South Africa when they won for the first time in Cape Town when CJ Stanley sent off. But that was the earliest red card in Six Nations history. It was a long time to be playing against 14 men, and there was just massive fault lines exposed, particularly in the scrum. I do think that it was different. There was a feeling leaving the stadium as well, or feeling within the stadium that really, I think it did come across on TV to some degree, but there was a panic about Ireland halfway through that second half. Now they got over it, and that's really, really impressive. But when you're leaving Twickenham with a record win and you also have so much to work on, it's a positive thing. The only issue being with that scrum in particular is there an obvious fix to it, and is there a personnel fix to it if Andrew Porter's not there? And I'm not sure there is. So that's what it was based on. It's great to win in Twickenham by that much and to come away with so much to work on, but you can't paper over the cracks that are there either. So I think that's why Saturday is really interesting to see, because I think Scotland have a good scrum, and they won't test Ireland in the same ways, but they will ask some questions of Ireland that we now have something to wonder about what Ireland will do in those scenarios.
Yeah, as you said there, the floor and ceiling of expectation for this Irish team, even from maybe this day last year or this week last year, were leading into the England game, serious questions being asked about the direction and about the coaching ticket in particular. So even in that year, things have changed. It's interesting you mentioned the panic, because I was going to ask you that. There was a sense watching it at least that, this is way too close for comfort, and England at least have the emotional pitch of the game in a way that Ireland don't. The closing 10 minutes where Ireland put it away, was that more a reflection on England fading, or are we giving Ireland credit for sticking to their principles and getting the job done?
They certainly did fade, but you got to look at little moments that wrested that momentum back. Ty Byrne turning over a line out, Andrew Conway's 50-22 kick, Andrew Conway's kick that landed in the in-goal area, and the pressure from the defensive line meant that they had to go for 50-22 when Ireland scored from that 50-22. Ireland suddenly put together phases and didn't force the offloads in the build-up to Jack Conan's try. It was the only time they got above 10 phases in the entire game. So while...
Yeah, and you're very welcome along to this sympathetic...
I don't understand how the RFU can allow Eddie Jones to diminish this tournament, because it's the bread and butter. It's the income stream for the unions. This is where the money comes from. The prize money is pretty good. The gate receipts for Twickenham are very important, and for them to go out and lose to Ireland at home, it should be unacceptable to them in a tournament that, while you are always looking towards 2023, it's always there, but that doesn't mean you don't focus on the here and now as well. It's possible to do both. And yes, I would be kind of worried about certain Irish players age profile that they're fine now, but will they be fine in 18 months? And I would like to see, Carberry's had 2 games in this tournament, so I'm less concerned about that now. There are things you want to be building towards. I completely understand why a coach would pick their best team in the here and now and would want to win, but they should always have the long term. I think Ireland have a reasonable balance on it. There's a couple of positions where I'm a bit concerned, but you're right. The tournament is in an interesting place because CBC have bought into it. The private money has now come into it. South Africa are hovering there. I think they will inevitably come in at some stage because that's where there's a lot of money to be made from that. I think they won't do it at the expense of the Italians. I think it might be an expanded tournament. It's in an interesting place, but it remains a very important piece of rugby real estate. I don't think it will be diminished. Eddie Jones will be gone in 2 years, and another England coach will come in and will probably respect the tournament more. He built his first World Cup cycle on a Grand Slam and a tournament win, and he seemed to care an awful lot more about it then. I think this might bite him in the ass in the end. It's a dangerous game to be playing, and he's undermining the confidence in his own team as well as he goes through these tournaments. Like he can say that this doesn't matter as much, but if it is back-to-back 5th place finishes for the best resourced team in the entire tournament, it's terrible.
And what degree is he reverse engineering this narrative? Like, if England were first in the Six Nations, he obviously wouldn't be speaking in this manner. But do you think he was ready to take short-term pain for long-term gain, or is that just the way it's played out?
It looks a bit muddled to me. He's spoken. He speaks in such clear terms. He said they got to this time last year, thought they had discovered something, and then Ireland, beat them out the gate, and he decided he's going to jettison this. He's on basically his 3rd iteration of his team. He got rid of the Vunipolas, a couple of others who've ended up actually coming back. So he's starting again and building a team. I would imagine he came into the Six Nations hoping that this team will be ready to actually perform, and now he's having to. It's coach speak. He's making. He's trying to defend his players to say they're at the start of a journey. And Ireland traditionally have a bit of a habit of messing up World Cup cycles. They peaked in 2018 when actually 2019 was the time to do it. England got their timing right. Like they really produced in that 2019 Six Nations, particularly in that win over Ireland, and that was the launch pad. So maybe he's targeting the 2023 Six Nations. But I wasn't aware of this phrase, but the jam tomorrow that I keep hearing on the BBC podcast, that they're all talking about it over there. Are English rugby fans and are the RFU content to let Eddie Jones, who's gone after 2023 anyway, so if they crash out the pool stages, he's going to walk away regardless. Can they really afford to play a long game when the game in front of you is always the most important one? Like, there's a balance. It has to be a balance, and losing to Scotland and Ireland, potentially losing to France is really poor. Like, if that was here, I think Andy Farrell would be under pressure, and Eddie Jones is so powerful in English rugby, it's quite hard to understand.
And you spoke about staging posts there and possibly the real estate of what a trophy represents. A secondary trophy obviously is the Triple Crown. Ireland's still in the mix for the whole championship obviously, but for Triple Crown point of view, it's not a lifetime ago that we were producing documentaries on winning Triple Crowns at home. So for this almost new look team, there's obviously some old faces, but like, winning is a habit, and to be picking up any kind of silverware should bode well. So would you be putting much stock on getting that job done this weekend?
Yeah, we almost got too good for Triple Crowns during the 2000s. Like 2004 was, like, I was in college. I was at the game against Scotland as a fan. It was a halcyon moment. Like, it was the first. It's all context, isn't it? I mean, Ireland hadn't won anything at Triple Crown since 1985. For many of us, it was the first big moment, that we could remember in our lifetimes of Ireland winning things. And then obviously they did it again in 06, 07, and then won the Grand Slam in 09. And suddenly it was about championships and Grand Slams. And that's natural. I think for this team it would be a big step, and I think it would be churlish not to acknowledge it. I mean, there's not that many trophies available in sport, and if you get a chance to win one, you should celebrate it. It's like, I think, like in football, say the League Cup. If you win the League Cup, you should celebrate it, because there's only three trophies available to win every year, and Ireland, I think if they win the Triple Crown, they should enjoy it. They might even win the title. If they don't, they know that France are the better team than them on the day, and they missed their shot. But beating, especially in this era, beating Wales, Scotland and England in one season is an achievement. And the tournament was once four nations. The Triple Crown predates the championship. It's a relic from rugby's traditions, but it's still there and it's still to be valued. And I think that it's an achievement in itself, and should rightly be celebrated. I was reared on stories of 82 and 85, and then 2004 happened. Sure, our standards have gone up since, but still, I think it's it will be worthy of celebration.
Yeah,
Brilliant. Last 2 years, I think we deserve to celebrate anything we can get. So
that's for sure.
Brilliant, those players especially who've played in empty stadiums for 2 years. I think if they can win a trophy at home and there's a full house in the Aviva, I wouldn't begrudge them that moment. Some people would call it minimalism or something like that, you know. But I think it's worthy of celebration.
Yeah, and speaking of the team that will be taking the field this weekend, there had been some suggestion that he might go with roughly the same team. Obviously, James Ryan notwithstanding, but Ian Henderson, Jack Conan, Mac Hansen, all in. Henderson in for Ryan, who Henderson obviously made that change early in the game at Twickenham. Hansen back on the right wing for Andrew Conway, potentially injury enforced.
Yeah, the knee injury.
Yeah, and then in terms of the back row, there's obviously been plenty of talk about balance there, and it seems like World Cup cycles every time this is the most stocked we've ever been at this position. But Jack Conan's back in, been good off the bench of late. I'd be interested to get your perspective on that in a moment. But in terms of the team at large, any surprises there?
No, well, the Hansen for Conway, they kept that one quiet. That injury, Conway was very good last weekend. It would have been no surprise if they kept him. The two big selection calls, obviously Henderson was always going to come in for Ryan because Ryan suffered his concussion last weekend and is likely to be out for a little while now because of his history in that area. So really the two big calls in the team, well maybe it was three. There was the centre, he stuck with Aki ahead of Henshaw, who was very good off the bench but hasn't had a lot of rugby. The front row, he's decided to go with them again. The word from the camp is that the ref got some decisions wrong, that it wasn't as bad as it looked, and that they can fix it. And they've now trusted Cian Healy, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong to get it right this weekend against a good Scottish front row. And then in the back row, it was whether O'Mahony would keep his place. I thought he was very quiet last weekend, and I think Conan. To me, that Leinster back row is better. It just works better, particularly the way Ireland play. And if O'Mahony doesn't have those big moments, games can pass him by. He was the top tackler, but I didn't notice him an awful lot in the stadium. On my watch back, he wasn't that prominent either, so I don't think he did enough to keep his place, and he's very good off the bench as well. So it's a bit of, it's a bit of fresh legs as well. A week on from a fairly draining game, team makes a lot of sense. I would have liked to see Gavin Coombs, Robert Balakoon get some involvement over the Six Nations, but with a title on the line, potentially you can understand why Andy Farrell's gone for a strong team. He's going to have 5 games, we think, in New Zealand this summer to try and get more people in. They're probably going to play the Maori twice. That's that long-term conversation, but for the here and now, he has introduced new faces. You got Kieran Treadwell, who's winning his 5th cap off the bench. That's another experience for him. But by and large, it was always going to be a strong team, his strongest team this weekend. So it does make an awful lot of sense.
And injuries in the front row obviously colour things in terms of strength and depth. But to what extent is sticking with the front row that struggled last week a reflection of maybe giving them that pat in the back and saying we back you to go again, or more so that they just don't have the depth to change things up?
Well, they definitely had the option of, like, if you brought Dave Kilcoyne and Rob Herring into the team for Cian Healy and Dan Sheehan, you might have lost something, particularly with Sheehan in terms of you're playing the loose, because Sheehan is an exceptional player in the loose, but Herring is more of a strong set piece player and more experienced as well. So there was a case to be made for bringing Herring in for more solidity, but what Sheehan gives you in the loose is just so exciting and breaks teams open, and they just they have this playing identity that they're sticking to. So there may be sacrifice. They could go with the scrummagers or the set piece players, but they're going for the ball players, and they're maybe sacrificing or taking a risk there. With Healy, Kilcoyne and Healy quite close, I think, at this stage. Maybe they feel like Kilcoyne gives you more impact off the bench, but it's that layer beneath. It's really they don't, with Porter out, I don't think they can go beyond what's in the squad at the moment. They've brought Jeremy Loughlin in. He's not Munster's starting loosehead. You look across the provinces, there's really they've cast this net around. They've had Ed Byrne in there, they've had Eric O'Sullivan in there. They played Finlay Beelum against Georgia on the loosehead side of the scrum, but they need him on the tight head side. Porter's obviously moved across, and they've robbed Peter to play Paul to some degree there, although he's a better loosehead than he is. But that's where there's a bit of concern. If you were missing Kelleher and Porter, suddenly the cupboard looks quite bare. And we have great depth in other areas. You've mentioned the back row, the back three, the midfield. Really, really good depth. You wouldn't have much concern if you lost a few bodies there. But if you scratch the surface of that front row, I'd be quite worried. And that's a big, when we talk about the long term and World Cup cycles, that is a big worry, because there might be guys coming through academies, but they're really more 2027 options. For this 2023 cycle, we kind of have what we have. And, I thought Keeney struggled with the pace of it last Saturday, and that was a big concern. The scrum wasn't going well, and he was behind the 8 ball when it came to the open play as well. He's 34, has an awful lot of rugby under his belt. He's traditionally been very fit, but I'd be a bit concerned about his longevity. So like, hopefully he answers his critics and comes out and has a great game on Saturday. But that is something I think we all need to watch out for.
And the back row, as we touched on there, perennially interesting. Like I don't want to be annoying the Six Nations loyalists, but I wonder if we got to a World Cup quarter final, what if this was the back row that would be playing, because Caelan Doris is possibly at a level where he's such a good ball player, as you said, that he'd possibly lose something by playing him at 6. So having him at 8 in 2 years' time might be the premier option. I don't know what you think about that.
I think, well, the one thing about this back row is that age profile was they're all going to be around in 2023. So you have, you're not worried really about any of them falling off a cliff, in terms of their age. So the way they're managing it at the moment maybe augurs for what they'll do at the World Cup. So O'Mahony comes in as a tactical call because England have a very strong line out with a really strong jumping 6 who's more of a second row, so you go horses for courses. Scotland have a 6 and a 7 who are more ball players, groundhogs, so you bring Conan back in. You don't necessarily need what O'Mahony brings. You've got Coombs outside the picture, but I think over the next 18 months he will come into the picture more. You've Timoney, who's a really good player as well. I like Doris at 6 and 8, to be honest. You may lose some of what Doris has to offer at 6, but you also gain what Jack Conan has to offer, and he's such a smart footballer. Listening to Alex Corbusiero, who's on the Left Wing podcast and Independent that I earlier in the week, he was talking about how Jack Conan is the better scrummager, which is something we don't often think about, the way a number 8 locks the scrum together, particularly when Ireland's second rows are lighter than most other international teams. Conan was actually heavily criticised after the Leinster Saracens game in 2020. He's obviously learned from that experience. He's gone on a Lions tour, so that's interesting that he has that string that we maybe don't appreciate when it comes to a number 8. Doris has loads of time to pick that up and to learn from his Leinster teammate. This is the back row Leinster pick. I don't think O'Mahony's doing enough to break it up, but there are cases to be made in certain games where he is a very good option. Say you're playing South Africa in a pool game, they have Peter Steph Toit at 6. Well, maybe you have to put O'Mahony there because you need to go after their lineup. Maybe you move Ty Byrne back. I still think that's a massive option for Ireland, but I really like, in terms of the way Ireland play, in terms of having ball carrying options across you're in every department of your forwards, passers, players who can hang out wide, who can do the kind of who can open defences up. I think Conan, flanked by Van der Fleer and Doris, is really, really impressive. It's one of the best back rows in the world, and that's why I think he's gone for it. And I think that's the way to go. I think this suits Ireland. The way they play, this back row suits them. Sure, you bring in O'Mahony at certain points, but O'Mahony's very experienced, comes off the bench and does something pretty impressive as well at times.
And Van der Fleer, possibly my own fault, is the odd one out in the 3 there that I named, because he's never been eye-catching, but top tackler for the team this year, and also his ball playing, I don't know if it's come on leaps and bounds, but it's more prominent, I would say, in the last few months and possibly year than it had been previously.
I haven't checked the stats since the England game, but before the England game he was actually the most first arrivals of any Ireland player at ruck time, so he's taken on a role that's normally held by second rows. So they've obviously identified something in his game that he can, like, his work rate is unbelievable, so he's like, his tackle count's huge, his carrying's really good, but he's also getting to the ball first, and Ireland have the quickest ball in this tournament. Their ruck success is really good, so that's another layer to his game that probably goes under the radar because we don't necessarily notice those ruck involvements. I was amazed when he got a new Leinster contract and wasn't handed a central contract recently. I mean, he's become a pivotal figure for Ireland over the last year or two. I was one of these people who was waiting for Dan Levy to come back. I love Levy. I think Levy is just, it's such a loss to Irish rugby. The fact that he was a generational number 7 and was so dominant in 18 and has been so destroyed by injuries. It's such a sad story that he hasn't been able to kick on. And I probably underappreciated what Van der Fleer had to offer as I willed Levy back to fitness. And I think in 19 he possibly was a bit underpowered. But right now he's top of his game, and he is... he's a very likeable guy, Josh Van der Fleer. He's very much a team man. He's so industrious, and he puts the team before himself all the time. I think Farrell and all the coaches love him. He's very unlucky not to be in line last year. I mean, he just, again, I think he falls between the cracks when it comes to standout performances, but he's such an important player for Ireland, and it's not a conversation. That's why we don't talk about him, because it's just he's there. He's number 7. He starts for Ireland when he's fit at the moment, and there's no one. Timoney's playing well, but there's no debate really that Josh Van der Fleer doesn't start for Ireland at the moment.
And last word just on the scrum, because it was possibly the top talking point off the back of it, and I don't know, like, to what extent we can frame what was in the referee's mind, but human nature would suggest that after swaying the game in one way massively in the first minute, even though it was a clear-cut red card, that second nature might be to try and even it up where possible. And Nigel Owens made the point that there was more parity in the scrum than there might normally have been. Like, we've talked about the front row, but the scrummaging has been something that was on Joe Schmidt's mind going into the World Cup in 2019, that the selections he made, leaving Devin Toner out, for example, to that end. Like, this isn't as fixable as like bad handling errors were at the last weekend, and discipline where Sexton going in front of the kicker, all this kind of stuff. Scrummaging is not something we can just fix ahead of this game, and possibly not something we can fix going into the World Cup either.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be overly concerned. Like, Scotland have a good front row, a good scrum. Scoman in particular is a very, very good operator. They've got WP Nell coming off the bench, so they have good operators who will have watched last week and will be licking their lips to get stuck into Ireland. You know, there's been a succession of experts coming into the studio all week to talk about it, and you know, I wouldn't profess to be. I played a bit of front row at a very low level, but you know, I wouldn't profess to understand the exact mechanics of it. But this is something that you would be worried about when it comes to a game against England, France, or South Africa down the road. South Africa are coming in November, maybe even New Zealand, probably not to the same extent, but those destructive scrums. Think back to the World Cup final. Think back to the Lions series when South Africa got on top of the Lions. Think back to Saracens Leinster in 2020 when Saracens were able to, you know, kick to the corner, win them all, kick to the corner, you know, get, you know, earn a scrum. They were just completely dominant in those, you know, in those exchanges. La Rochelle, Leinster. There's just a bit of a trend there that comes up every so often when we come up against a certain profile of team, and it will be an underlying concern for Ireland going to this World Cup, where they play South Africa in the pool, and they probably will play, you know, France or New Zealand in a quarter final. They will have to take on teams with this level of power along the way, and they need to learn an awful lot from last Saturday. Yes, the referee may have got some decisions wrong, but he rewarded dominance. He's a French official. He's widely regarded as one of the best scrummaging referees in the world, and for all that Ireland are upset about his performance, I think there was a lot of legitimacy to the way England got on top, you know, and there were technical things that Ireland were doing wrong, and what I fear for is that they weren't able to figure it out themselves, that they were looking to the ref for to solve their problems, when, as Keith Wood said, it was Mike Ross was saying, we need to cheat more. They need to figure that stuff out. It's thinking on the go. You cannot rely on the referee to sort out your problems. And for all that you can send a missive into World Rugby on the Monday, if that's a World Cup quarter final, it's too late. If that's after this Saturday and you've lost out in your Triple Crown and your championship, it's too late to figure those things out. So they got to figure that stuff out in themselves. It's great that the warning came in a record win. You know, like that's the good thing. And they have they've good personnel in there. You know, John Fogarty's very highly regarded. They have good players, very experienced players, and they've got to learn from it. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing on Saturday, is how they handle that battle. Wayne Barnes will referee it differently to Matthew Raynell. You know, there is a style thing, and if you're playing France in the quarter final, the one good thing is you want to have a French ref, but the French will target it. You know, they have that's where, look at the top 14 every week. The scrum is the main battleground. That is something Ireland need to be right on top of, and their attacking game is so good. It would be such a shame to have it undermined by a malfunctioning set piece at the highest level. Bit of time to fix it now, but it's going to be from within this group of players. There's no, apart from Andrew Porter and Ronan Keller are coming back, obviously, there's no knights in shining armour who are coming in. You know, you can't go and sign a project player unless there's some Irish qualified guy that we haven't heard of in South Africa that they've got an eye on. It's going to come from within this player group, so it's going to be a technical fix, and they've got to figure out that on their own.
It's the other games where winning almost becomes a habit for a team, and Scotland should be contemporaries of Ireland really in terms of resources if all things were equal, but they haven't got to that level yet. And yet, given the circumstances and the fact that they've been written off in many quarters, this could potentially be a type of game where they raise their levels. And Johnny Sexton and Cian Healy were making the point, Healy in particular, about the time Dan Parks kicked that goal at Croke Park, and Sexton saying that if Ireland produced a performance like they did against England, it might not be enough against Scotland. So this could be a banana skin for Ireland. You look at the 15 names on the Scottish team sheet, they're very, very good. They're good players. They have, as I say, in the last 2 years, they've gone to Paris, London and Clanathley and won away from home against France, England and Wales, which traditionally they weren't able to do. Now, they were behind closed doors, but you know, I think you write the Scottish team off at your peril. Like they're not a walkover by any means. At the same time, they must be low on confidence after the window that they've had. You know, that to start so strongly against England and then get hockeyed by France and beaten by a Wales team that was still, like, it was an emotional performance in Cardiff, but they didn't play particularly Wales that day, and Scotland, a better team than Scotland would have picked them off.
But with the pressure off, they're quite dangerous. I think, you know, this is when expectations are low. Like, they don't play well when expectations are high. They are like the classic, you know, Irish underdog story of 15, 20 years ago. And there's definitely, if Ireland get ahead of themselves, which I get the sense they don't, like, for all that we were critical of Ireland after last weekend, the immediate post-match reaction was pretty self-aware. I was in Kobe for the Ireland-Russia game in Japan during the World Cup, where they all told us they played really well, and I was like, we were all thought they were deluded. You know, there was real worry that and if they believed that, they were in trouble, and they were in trouble. Whereas this time around, they played badly against England. They won by record score. They didn't allow the record score to paper over the cracks. They were all very honest about where they were, and I think that's encouraging, because they've been in there all week trying to right wrongs. They're not believing, you know, they're not drinking the Kool-Aid, as Eddie O'Sullivan would say. So if they can put that all together into a performance, if they play to their strengths, they'll beat the Scottish team. If they're off it, if they're starting to think about, like, I think that 2010 game, it was the last game at Croke Park. They were going to win a Triple Crown, and they'd all brought their inter-county GAA jerseys to wear as kind of a sign-off from Croke Park. They brought in Mumford and Sons the night before for a concert, I think.
I was reading something about Healy saying that perhaps the preparation the night before wasn't at its utmost.
I don't think they've brought in an international band since. But yeah, like that. It sounds like they just got it wrong that week, and you can be sure that even having Healy, Sexton, Paul O'Connell in the setup will guard against that. But yeah, if they're off it, Scotland can beat them, and Scotland could just come out and just shackles off, play really, really well, and target the Irish scrum. And, you know, because they heard the ref was bad last week, they think they're okay, and they're not. I don't see it personally, but it's not beyond the realms by any means, and that's what makes it interesting. I mean, Ireland have to go. They're expected to win. They have to go and win, and this is what, at the moment, separates Ireland from Scotland, is that they win the games they're expected to win. The one game they've lost this season is the one they weren't. So yeah, I like it. It's a fascinating matchup. Ireland should be better than them. They should be stronger. They've generally had the edge in this fixture for the last 12 years since that game, apart from the time the bus was late in Murrayfield. So yeah, I think they're going to win it, but I think you're right. I wouldn't write off a Scottish victory just yet.
Nigel Owens made the point that there was more parity in the scrum than there might normally have been. Like, we've talked about the front row, but the scrummaging has been something that was on Joe Schmidt's mind going into the World Cup in 2019, that the selections he made, leaving Devin Toner out, for example, to that end. Like, this isn't as fixable as like bad handling errors were at the last weekend, and discipline where Sexton going in front of the kicker, all this kind of stuff. Scrummaging is not something we can just fix ahead of this game, and possibly not something we can fix going into the World Cup either.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be overly concerned. Like, Scotland have a good front row, a good scrum. Scoman in particular is a very, very good operator. They've got WP Nell coming off the bench, so they have good operators who will have watched last week and will be licking their lips to get stuck into Ireland. You know, there's been a succession of experts coming into the studio all week to talk about it, and you know, I wouldn't profess to be. I played a bit of front row at a very low level, but you know, I wouldn't profess to understand the exact mechanics of it. But this is something that you would be worried about when it comes to a game against England, France, or South Africa down the road. South Africa are coming in November, maybe even New Zealand, probably not to the same extent, but those destructive scrums. Think back to the World Cup final. Think back to the Lions series when South Africa got on top of the Lions. Think back to Saracens Leinster in 2020 when Saracens were able to, you know, kick to the corner, win them all, kick to the corner, you know, earn a scrum. They were just completely dominant in those, you know, in those exchanges. La Rochelle Leinster. There's just a bit of a trend there that comes up every so often when we come up against a certain profile of team, and it will be an underlying concern for Ireland going to this World Cup, where they play South Africa in the pool, and they probably will play, you know, France or New Zealand in a quarter final. They will have to take on teams with this level of power along the way, and they need to learn an awful lot from last Saturday. Yes, the referee may have got some decisions wrong, but he rewarded dominance. He's a French official. He's widely regarded as one of the best scrummaging referees in the world, and for all that Ireland are upset about his performance, I think there was a lot of legitimacy to the way England got on top, you know, and there were technical things that Ireland were doing wrong, and what I fear for is that they weren't able to figure it out themselves, that they were looking to the ref for to solve their problems, when, as Keith Wood said, it was Mike Ross was saying, we need to cheat more. They need to figure that stuff out. It's thinking on the go. You cannot rely on the referee to sort out your problems, and for all that you can send a missive into World Rugby on the Monday, if that's a World Cup quarter final, it's too late. If that's after this Saturday and you've lost out in your Triple Crown and your championship, it's too late to figure those things out. So they got to figure that stuff out themselves. it's great that the warning came in a record win. You know, like that's the good thing. And they have they've good personnel in there. You know, John Fogarty's very highly regarded. They have good players, very experienced players, and they've got to learn from it. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing on Saturday, is how they handle that battle. Wayne Barnes will referee it differently to Matthew Raynell. You know, there is a style thing, and if you're playing France in the quarter-final, the one good thing is you want to have a French ref.
For a Triple Crown point of view, it's not a lifetime ago that we were producing documentaries on winning Triple Crowns at home. So for this almost new look team, there's obviously some old faces, but like winning is a habit, and to be picking up any kind of silverware should bode well. So would you be putting much stock on getting that job done this weekend?
Yeah, we almost got too good for Triple Crowns during the 2000s. Like 2004 was, like, I was in college. I was at the game against Scotland as a fan. It was a halcyon moment, like, it was the first. It's all context, isn't it? I mean, Ireland hadn't won anything at Triple Crown since 1985. You know, for many of us, it was the first big moment, you know, that we could remember in our lifetimes of Ireland winning things. And then obviously they did it again in 06, 07, and then won the Grand Slam in 09. And suddenly it was about championships and Grand Slams. And you know, that's natural. I think for this team it would be a big step, and I think it would be churlish not to acknowledge it. I mean, there's not that many trophies available in the sport, and you know, if you get a chance to win one, you should celebrate it. You know, it's like, I think, like in football, say the League Cup. If you win the League Cup, you should celebrate it, because there's only three trophies available to win every year, and you know, Ireland, I think if they win the Triple Crown, they should enjoy it. They might even win the title. If they don't, they know that France are the better team than them on the day, and they missed their shot. But beating, especially in this era, beating Wales, Scotland and England in one season is an achievement. And you know, the tournament was once Four Nations. The Triple Crown predates the championship. It's a relic from rugby's traditions, but it's still there and it's still to be valued. And I think that, you know, it's an achievement in itself, and should rightly be celebrated. You know, I was reared on stories of 82 and 85, and then 2004 happened. Sure, our standards have gone up since, but still, I think it's a word. You know, it will be worthy of celebration.
Yeah,
particularly the last 2 years, I think we deserve to celebrate anything we can get. So
that's for sure.
Those players, especially who've played in empty stadiums for 2 years, I think if they can win a trophy at home and there's a full house in the Aviva, I wouldn't begrudge them that moment. Some people would call it minimalism or something like that, you know, but I think it's worthy of celebration.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
The OTB Sports app. Listen, watch,